Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm honored and privileged to welcome a very accomplished entrepreneur, Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya. Jaijit, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Jaijit is the founder and CEO of Zerone Microsystems Private Limited in the fintech space. He's worked with several organizations. He's on the board of several prestigious organizations, and he's the author of 5 books on e-governance. So, Jaijit, tell me, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
These simple questions are perhaps one of the toughest to answer, but because there's so many things that really shape your life.
Correct.
But it just the first thing that I actually remember having a deep impact was a small little PB100 Casio computer that was given to me by my brother, which was almost like a calculator, a small thing. And it opened up the world of technology for me. And it was a character-based system with one single line that you could see in that system, which was on a LCD basis. And there wasn't much that you could do with it. But given the flexibility in technology, I could actually extract an animated game out of it based on the characters and so on. And that was absolutely wonderful. So I ended up writing 4 or 5 such games, and then I thought I'll send those games to Casio. I was hardly 12 or 13 in those days, and sending an expensive international letter in those days was a challenge.
Expensive.
But that took me to, I think, I would say my next milestone was entering into the portals of IIT Kanpur, where the passion for technology was further strengthened. I think those 4 years spent was absolutely wonderful in terms of the professionalism that the institute gets you, that they train you in, the sheer exposure to technology and the joy of technology, and what technology can really do in transforming people's lives. And I think in my journey in life, immediately after I finished my MBA, I spent about the next 6 years going to 9 different countries, living there, working there. And the eye-opener was that although I was passionate about technology, that wasn't the case with everybody else. There was a huge resistance to change. There's a huge fear of technology. There is, and it's the same language used across countries, that, sir, practically it doesn't work. Be it Hong Kong, be it India, be it Finland, that will not work because, we are afraid of it, so it will not work.
Correct.
And that was, again, a massive eye-opener, that what seems to be a no-brainer for me is not a no-brainer for everybody else.
Well said.
And it did take a lot of time for people to change, which is why now we have this term millennials and Gen Z, who seem to be far more comfortable than what our generation used to be.
Very interesting. So let's now move to your baby, Zerone Microsystems Private Limited. Let's start with you telling me and all our listeners about this venture.
So, we conceptualized Zerone. In fact, the Zerone name itself stands for 0 and 1, which was based on our desire to have an Indian name, but not overtly Indian sounding. So it basically stands for positional mathematics that Aryabhatta had constructed. And that's how the name Zerone comes in. And what we really wanted to do was provide technology to segments of the population which needs support for their own small little businesses. So when we started looking at, as a partner in KPMG, we were doing an audit on the Jan Dhan Yojana of the government. And we saw that 200 million accounts had been rolled out in 2 months flat, which audit led to the Jan Dhan Yojana being cited in the Guinness Book of World Records. But from there, the penny dropping moment was that why can't we use the cards being provided through Jan Dhan Yojana for payments, and instead of trying to use the dumb button-based feature phones, which were very, very complicated to make payments from.
Correct.
And since even now 50% of the population does not have smartphones, they have the old mobile phones, can we get their cards to start making a payment? And if we can do that, then can we start tracking those payments and then start providing them with loans and then start providing them with everything else that they need for their business? So typically when people tell us, are you a payment tech company? We are not a payment tech company. We are a merchant tech company.
Okay.
So we try to find out what is that the merchant requires. It may be payments, and we did start with payments, but it could be many other things that we provide as a horizontal to what the merchant really wants.
Okay.
And that's been and a very, very exciting journey, because the rate at which we have been growing, we added 10,000 merchants in the last 3 days itself.
Wow.
And that's a tremendous explosive growth that we're facing.
So, when I was reading about you, you're an expert on societal transformation, leveraging technology. Can you help us understand this with an example?
Sure. I mean, there are so many examples, and the way I ended up being a societal transformation person is I first started off being a government, an e-governance person. And spending an enormous amount of time and effort in trying to get government to adopt technology.
Correct.
Which is why I ended up writing the first book on e-governance, which the then President Abdul Kalam very generously decided to release it. And the point was, when the government tries to procure technology, how will they differentiate between one software and another software? How can they justify that a smaller server is more expensive than a larger server? And in those days, I remember I used to jokingly tell the financial advisor, the FAs in various departments, that, well, you don't buy servers in kilograms and you don't buy software in liter. It has to be done in a very different way.
Correct.
And that's where the transformation starts happening. It's very slow. It's not that the FAs did not understand. As individuals, they understood. They did not understand it when they sit on the chair, because there are a whole bunch of processes that needs to be changed in order for those procurements to happen. And that was a change that was being brought in. Let me take another example. There is rural tourism happening in India. In fact, there are organizations such as Seva doing rural tourism. But how do you talk to a German tourist coming in, trying to sell your rural tourism in Gujarat? You don't even know English. You only know Gujarati. How do you do it? And we see small little technological tools being used such as using Google Translate or Airbnb to communicate and get the tourist in. And that is leading to income enhancement happening in this country.
Absolutely.
Same with healthcare, education. In fact, one of my favorites is where for 2 decades we've been pushing for inversion of discovery of what you are entitled to. What does it mean? As a regular citizen, you would go to the various departments and say, well, what does your department give to me? And my favorite example was, unfortunately, a real life case in Maharashtra where there was a single tribal handicapped woman who was pregnant, and therefore she was supposed to get some 5 different entitlements from the government. But she would go and she wouldn't even know where to knock the door off and how to get those entitlements, and she was getting nothing.
Okay.
And therefore the thought that came in is, why can't we invert that and let the government find out who they should provide the entitlements to?
Okay.
And based on which, in fact, one of my interns went ahead and has created a large company called EasyGov, just trying to do that, where you take the profile of the person and give it to the various departments. They put in the filters and the rule engines, and through an artificial intelligence, they're finding out who they should give the entitlements to, and who are genuinely, needed to provide that. So can we therefore start providing automatic pension rather than the senior citizens coming and applying for it? Can we start providing automatic passport the moment you start, getting a government job or finishing your bachelor's? And that's where the societal transformation starts happening.
Okay.
At various levels.
So, help me again understand. I'll come back to the same question. You gave me an example of rural tourism of a German tourist going into Gujarat, say, and they're using Google Translate to be able to communicate. Where does Zerone come in, and what facilitation does Zerone do in this transaction?
So Zerone helps in multiple horizontal layers, as I said. For example, one, we get to know what payments the person is getting, because they use our systems to get the payment in. Now, a German tourist will typically pay with which instrument? They will not pay with UPI, they'll pay with a card, with an international card. How do you accept that payment? Because they'll typically come down and have local food, and they also organize local dances and so on, and then they collect payments. Now that's where Zerone comes in. We have democratized the card acceptance business.
Okay.
So any small merchant can simply upload their PAN number, some KYC, and thanks to the changes brought in by the government and RBI, all of that has become online, and we can onboard this merchant, and then this merchant can start accepting card payments from their own mobile phone.
Okay.
So you can either tap the card and accept the payment, or you can scan the card and accept the payment. Okay. And we're the largest soft POS provider out there, one of the largest in the world right now.
Okay.
In addition to that, there will be need for loans that this person will be having, because they would like to add maybe an air conditioner in their little hut where the tourist wants to stay. Based on their payment and their incomes that they're receiving, we then start providing them with loans.
Okay.
We then start providing them with also a view of the payments they've received from everywhere else, because they're receiving payments from Airbnb, they're receiving payments from their card transactions. We help them integrate all of that and give them one dashboard, providing them what is the profitability, not in a complex way and an over-engineered way that a larger firm would need it, but for a small entity out there, what are the optimally engineered products that they need, which helps them in increasing their income and increasing visibility of what they're doing in their business.
So there are many payment platforms, from Apple Pay to Google Pay to Paytm to Zerone. Are you all competing with one another, or are you facilitating each of these platforms?
Well, the world is a mixed world always. As I mentioned, we are not a pure payment tech company. We're a merchant tech company.
Okay.
Also, in addition, none of these other companies actually provide a payment acceptance on your phone. And what we do is we provide payment acceptance on your phone, with the card acceptance on your phone. Okay. So you can actually take any card and you can either tap the card and get a payment, or you can scan the card and get a payment on your phone. And also works on phones which are lower technology phones, which is phones which do not have NFC. So you will find that Apple is working towards accepting credit card payments on your phone, but only when the phone is an expensive Apple phone, which has got a technology called NFC technology. Most phones in India do not have NFC technology. In fact, 98% of the phones in India do not have NFC technology.
Okay.
So what we do is we enable card payments to be accepted in non-NFC phones as well as in NFC phones. It's almost like saying, India has bullock carts as well as rockets. Correct. And you need to service all of those technologies between bullock carts and rockets. That's what we do in terms of payments. And we go beyond, as I mentioned, to provide a large number of other horizontal requirements that a merchant has, and not just limited to payments.
Wonderful. So, Jaijit, for someone who's at the cutting edge of one of the main pillars of e-governance, which is management of our cash flows in individual hands and moving towards digital cash, what is your perspective on how is India progressing towards a digital cash economy, or will we still predominantly stay in a cash-based economy?
The statistics are that we seem to be slipping back again and again into a cash-based economy. But that's because we need to reach a critical mass where suddenly there will be a flip and everybody will flip to a digital economy. There are multiple reasons why cash is there. In fact, in spite of the government's efforts through demonetization and then subsequently the COVID impact that we have, we are still going through, a large amount of digitalization has happened.
Okay.
But unfortunately, after every such push, the pendulum swings back to more cash.
Okay.
And there are myriad reasons for it. There are regulatory reasons, there is taxation reasons, there is infrastructure reasons, and so on and so forth. And general distrust on something new that's coming in. So it'll take some time before the people start getting comfortable. Before we have an infrastructure which is even more, which we can depend even more than what we have right now, especially in the rural areas.
Very interesting.
And rural is a significant part of our economy.
Correct.
So it is going to be a longer journey for a larger adoption of digital payments than what we have right now.
Okay. So one more question related to Zerone before we move to another segment. You also talk about consumption of data. How have you seen the evolution of consumption of data in our country? I mean, big businessmen have said data is the new oil.
Right. No, as I've always said that data is not just oil; it's much more than oil. And reason being that once you consume oil, it's over.
Yeah.
Whereas once you consume data, it's still there to be reconsumed and reconsumed and so on and so forth. Also, unlike oil, you can take the essence out of data in a manner that you can't do with oil. So once you use the data to train an artificial intelligence system, then it is the value add is significantly different. So what people do with that, oil as data or data as oil is very different from what one can do with oil. With oil, you can simply burn it and you get energy, and then use energy in whichever way. But with data, you can do so many myriad different things that it's just an explosion of usage that will happen. So it's very significantly different. The value is much higher than oil in that sense.
Correct.
But it really depends on how you can use it and who can use it. And therefore, we also see a journey towards a situation where we have the data haves and the data have-nots, and that's already happening in the corporate world. It'll soon come to individuals who've got access to data and those who do not have access to data. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how the society gets impacted with some people getting access to data and others not getting access to data.
Fascinating. So, let's talk a little bit about e-governance, your books. Based on all your experience and research, what are some of the challenges that we are facing in our e-governance requirements in our country?
India has got multiple levels of government. You have the local government, which is municipalities, Panchayati Raj, then you've got the state governments, and you've got the central government. Each of the governments have around 40 departments, if not more. And with roughly, 30 states, you've got 30 into 40, 1,200 departments out there. And then you've got the central government departments. One of the key challenges is the fact that these departments continue to operate in silos in spite of 2 decades of effort by the governments to integrate them.
Okay.
It's not easy to integrate them, and therefore the outcome of that is that we still have significant leakages. We're still not able to provide better services to the government, to the citizens, and therefore you will have situations where somebody is applying for a gun license and is also below poverty line. Now, as we know, a gun costs at least 50,000 rupees upwards. How can somebody who's below poverty line apply for a gun license? So why are we not able to combine these two and stop leakages happening? Or why are we not able to combine database and find out who really needs help in terms of job loss after COVID, or in terms of healthcare benefits, and so on and so forth. Once we have data across multiple departments, then we can do exactly what we discussed a little while ago, which is use the data to generate disproportionate benefits for the people and the citizens, and be able to provide far better services than what we have right now. So that is a challenge that continues to be there. Initiatives such as Aadhaar has had limited impact. I mean, it has got deep impact, but it could have had far more impact if some of the liberties of using Aadhaar would have been provided by the Supreme Court. So I think the legislation, the society, and the government all has to evolve further to be able to use the power of technology in a responsible manner, so that we don't violate people's privacy but do provide them with the benefits that they need.
Very interesting. So just a follow-up question on that. I mean, Aadhaar, for example, has got all my personal data, right? So does my permanent account number. And people get frustrated when every time some government department asks you to give you the same information over and over again, and but you already have it.
Right.
Why is it that despite so much, work being done to digitize all our data, we still work in so many silos?
Exactly, precisely the point. When the government tells you to submit some documents, they will ask you probably for your 10th class certificate, a passport copy, a PAN card copy, and so on and so forth. But guess who gave you all of those documents? It was the government.
Correct.
So who should be having it? The government should be having it.
Right.
And if the government doesn't have it, and if I'm providing it, what is, who guarantees that that is not a fake document? There is far more sacrosancy of and sanguineness of the document that the government keeps and provides rather than what I'm providing.
Correct.
Now, fortunately, the government is fast evolving and is trying to connect all of these together. But the challenge that we had for 20 years was that how do we connect them together? If we use the name and the address and so on and so forth, we know, the same name is spelled very differently. There's no concept of first name and last name for some of the people in the southern states, and so on. So you can't really create a unique identifier which links your data across multiple departments and agencies if you do not use a single identifier. But the challenge in either case, either you do it through a single identifier such as Aadhaar, or you beat it and you do it through some other algorithm which I can't think of and nobody else has been able to think of for over 20 years. But if you're able to do it either which ways, you will have a 360-degree view of the citizen. That apparently is not acceptable to the civic society. And that therein lies the challenge. We do want the services, but we are also afraid of what will happen if the government has a 360-degree view of ourselves. So that's an evolution that the society has to go through. Either we say that, well, the poor need not get everything that they're supposed to get because the government doesn't have a 360-degree view of who the poor are, or the rich maintain their privacy.
Correct.
And that's a conflict that we need to resolve.
Well said. So I'm going to move to the last segment. I've got time for 2 or 3 more questions for you. So these questions are for you personally.
Sure.
So, Jaijit, as you look back, such an amazing career, so much to look forward to. Where you are at today, what does success mean to you?
Very, very interesting question. At the end of the day, for me, success is if I'm being able to make a difference to the lives of a large number of people in a very positive way. For me, that's what success would be, and that's what I strive to do.
Okay. Very interesting. And a follow-up question from that is, who or what inspires you?
Very interesting question. I have been thinking about it for a long time, and at different points in time, different people inspired me. I think obviously, as with most people, one's parents inspire you. My father has inspired me significantly. But as I age, I think where I derive my inspiration from is more from the universe. Such a complex thing, which is in absolute harmony. It is able to move all its celestial objects in such perfect harmony, right down to the smallest thing in the nature. It is absolutely amazing. In fact, reminds me of a saying from Sri Aurobindo that the hand that sends the Jupiter spinning through heaven spends as much cunning to fashion a curl.
Wow.
Which is where it takes as much effort to do a little curl, to do a little microprocessor for that matter, it's just a small microprocessor, as it takes to probably build a dam or to send the Jupiter spinning through heaven. And therefore, focus on details is as much satisfying, and it should be as much satisfying as doing the big things which are optically visible. But it's the small things also which matter, and the harmony and the orchestration between the big things and the small things is very, very evocative for me.
Wow. So my last question now to you, and this is a question for all the young individuals who are going to be listening to you and all the thoughts that you're talking about now. What would your advice be to a young individual who's starting off on their entrepreneurial journey and looking up to people like you who've done so much amazing stuff?
I think my advice to those who would like to go down the path of either entrepreneurship or a career for that matter is to pick up something that they're really passionate about.
Okay.
It's something that many people would have spoken about even before me. You would have seen that in movies, but it's only when you go through it and you go through something that you may not like that you will start talking about issues like, what about my work-life balance? What about my hobbies?
Correct.
Well, but if you're really passionate, then issues like work-life balance disappear. You'll always find out how to solve the problem. You will not get stuck. But the day you lose passion, it's pointless to do entrepreneurship post that. If entrepreneurship is just another job, don't even get into it. It has to be a matter of passion.
Fantastic. Jaijit, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you and Zerone and everything else that you're doing lots of success.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have a conversation with you. And I hope this conversation is of value to all your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the brand called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.